The city felt quieter the morning after Valentine's Day, as if the world itself was catching its breath after a night of confessions, flowers left on doorsteps, and messages typed with trembling fingers. The streets still carried the soft echo of laughter, the faint perfume of roses, the glow of lights that had not yet fully faded. Somewhere above it all, behind a window no one was supposed to notice, Jimin stood with his coffee growing cold in his hands, staring out at a skyline that felt too big for the thoughts he was carrying. The night before had been loud in all the ways that made him feel small. Cameras, schedules, bright smiles practiced for hours, jokes that landed on cue. Valentine's Day had come and gone like any other date on the calendar, wrapped in obligations that left no room for honesty. To the world, it had looked perfect. To Jimin, it had felt unfinished, like a sentence cut off before the meaning could be said out loud. He set the cup down, untouched, and pressed his palm against the glass. The reflection staring back at him looked calm enough, but his chest told a different story. There were words he had rehearsed in silence, promises he had made to himself that he would say one day when the noise was gone. The problem with noise was that it never really left. It only learned how to disguise itself. Behind him, the door opened with a soft click. Jungkook stepped inside without speaking, moving the way people do when they already know they are welcome. The room felt different the second he entered, as if the air had shifted to make space for something unspoken. Jimin didn't turn around right away. He didn't have to. He could recognize Jungkook's presence in the rhythm of his footsteps, in the way the silence grew heavier instead of lighter. Jungkook closed the door gently, as if afraid a louder sound might scare the moment away. He leaned against the wall for a second, watching Jimin's reflection in the glass. There was a tenderness in his eyes that never seemed to survive the spotlight, something quiet and careful that only appeared in rooms without cameras. He had spent the entire night pretending not to notice the way Jimin's laughter had sounded a little hollow, the way his smile had lingered a second too long after each joke. "You didn't sleep," Jungkook said finally, his voice low, not a question but an observation. Jimin let out a breath that could have been a laugh if it had tried harder. "Neither did you." Jungkook crossed the room slowly, stopping just close enough that Jimin could feel the warmth of him without being touched. The city stretched out in front of them, vast and indifferent, a reminder of how small private moments were in a world that demanded everything be shared. For a while, they stood like that, side by side, pretending they were only watching the view. Valentine's Day had always been strange for them. Not because of what it represented, but because of what it demanded. Love packaged neatly for consumption. Affection measured in posts and headlines. Every gesture turned into something performative. They had learned to navigate it with practiced ease, to smile when expected, to joke when asked, to move on when the night was over. But something about this year had made the pretending feel heavier. "I hate that it felt like nothing," Jimin said quietly. "Like it was just another schedule." Jungkook's jaw tightened for a moment before he spoke. "It wasn't nothing to me." Jimin finally turned to look at him. The honesty in Jungkook's eyes was disarming in the way honesty often is when you're not ready for it. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. It was simple and direct, and that made it harder to look away from. They had shared too many moments like this to count. Late-night talks that stretched until dawn. Laughter that came too easily. Silences that felt full instead of empty. The world had always been eager to label them, to guess at meanings they never confirmed. It was easier to let people believe what they wanted than to explain the complexity of something that didn't fit neatly into a narrative. After Valentine's Day, the rumors had only grown louder. Every glance became evidence. Every shared frame became proof of something people were desperate to define. Jimin scrolled past headlines he pretended not to read, feeling the familiar mix of frustration and fear tighten in his chest. It wasn't the speculation that scared him. It was the way the speculation threatened to take something real and turn it into a spectacle. Jungkook reached out then, not to touch, but to close the distance between them just enough that the space felt intentional. "We don't owe them the truth," he said. "But we owe it to ourselves not to keep pretending with each other." The words landed heavier than they sounded. Jimin swallowed, nodding once. He had spent so long protecting the space between them by keeping it undefined, afraid that naming it might make it fragile. The irony was that the silence had begun to do more damage than any label ever could. They sat down on the edge of the bed, the room still dim with early light. Outside, the city was waking up, unaware of the quiet decisions being made in its shadow. Jungkook rested his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor as if the answers might be written there. Jimin watched him, thinking about all the things they had postponed in the name of timing. "I don't want another year of almost," Jungkook said. "Almost saying it. Almost choosing it. Almost making time for us." Jimin felt the truth of that settle in his chest. The word almost had followed them everywhere, softening the edges of choices they were too afraid to make. Almost was safer than certainty. Almost left room for retreat. but almost also left room for regret. "What do you want to do?" Jimin asked. Jungkook looked up then, and for a moment, the boyish uncertainty he rarely showed flickered across his face. "I want us to stop hiding in plain sight," he said. "Not from the world. From ourselves." The room grew quieter, as if listening. They talked then, not in grand declarations, but in small, practical plans. They spoke about stealing time between schedules, about choosing places the world wouldn't notice, about finding moments that belonged to them alone. They spoke about learning how to protect something private without letting it wither in silence. The plans were not dramatic. They were intentional, and that made them feel real. Jimin smiled at the simplicity of it, at the way something so ordinary could feel so brave. He realized that romance didn't have to be loud to be meaningful. It could be quiet mornings and shared meals, conversations that didn't need an audience, the comfort of knowing someone would still be there when the lights went out. Outside, the city fully woke, unaware that two people inside one small room had just changed the shape of their future in the simplest way possible.